Last week I started building the radial drives, which are an extremely important part of the steering system. The radial drives are the parts that transfer the motion of the steering cables to the rudders. Think of them like tillers that keep a constant distance for the cables to turn the rudders. These radial drives have to be very stiff and strong parts because at speed, the rudders will be exerting a bunch of torque into these drives. Last week I laid carbon fiber over foam to make the drives. This week I'm building the clamps that clamp the radial drive to the rudder. They are going to be molded to the shape of the mount on the rudder stock while being glued to the radial drive. These clamps have to be super beefy, like really strong. Like I said earlier, the loads on the rudder when the boat is sailing fast will be huge, and so the last thing that we want to happen is for us to lose the ability to steer the boat.
My name is Matt. Follow along as I turn Duracell, the legendary ocean racing sailboat, into a comfortable cruising home.
All right, so I got my radial drive done, which is the easy part of the project. The next part is to figure out how to mount them to the rudder stock. And so, as you can see, there are these old mounting positions. They're square on this round tube that is the rudder stock. What I'm going to do is build a fiberglass clamp that is laminated to the radial drive and clamps to that square mounting position on each rudder. And this is the much more difficult part because I need the radial drive to be square to the rudder and to the stock. And then I need to laminate this very big structural piece onto the mounting position, but also release it because I can't install the rudder with the radial drive on it. I have to be able to attach the radial drive after the rudder is put into the boat. And I'm sure you're wondering what these old mounting positions were for, and they were for the old tillers that were on each rudder. The wheel turned a gearbox which pushed two tillers that were on each rudder. And so that's what those old mounting positions were. So I'm going to reuse the mounting positions for the radial drives for the new steering system. So that's the project for the next couple days, is just to figure out how I'm going to build these clamps. Okay, so I think I've got a good plan going here. My radial drive is mounted and square to everything, and I've got a backing kind of a, this is going to make the flange that's on the clamp, and it's all clamped together. It's actually all glued together, but I've also got a bunch of release tape all strategically placed such that I can take this whole thing apart theoretically after the epoxy is cured, and the clamp will be attached to the radial drive and the rudder will remain clean. So we're doing the first lamination right now. Tomorrow we'll do the big lamination, which is a big vacuum bag to make the actual clamp on the part.
Here we go with some old school Duracell content, pumping the Total Boat epoxy.
Never gets old. All right, now the goal of these clamps I'm building is to achieve a thickness at the flange and around the rudder stock that is about equal to the original tillers that were mounted to these rudders, which is about a ½ inch thick overall. The thickness of a laminate is published in the data sheets of that specific laminate that I'm using, and the thickness also depends on whether I'm vacuum bagging or hand laying the part. A vacuum bagged part has a lower resin to fiber ratio and is therefore thinner and lighter than a hand laid part. I'm using a 12 ounce 45/45 biaxial fiberglass and a 9 ounce unidirectional carbon that is laid across the flange and over the stock. Both of them have a thickness of about 0.013 inches when vacuum bagged, so I need roughly 40 layers, or 20 of each Biax glass and carbon uni to achieve a thickness of 1/2 inch. I started by just laying a couple layers around the stock onto the quadrant without vacuum bagging, which will seal all the corners and seams that are between my call plate and the drive and the stock in the quadrant. If I want the vacuum bag to seal, I can't have any air coming in anywhere around the part. So I did 2 layers of glass and then covered it with peel ply before letting it cure overnight. The next day I came back and did a little grinding to clean up any rough spots and then coated the part with thickened epoxy to make it sticky and began my lamination. I went into this thinking that I could get the whole thing done in a day, and I was wrong. As I laminated, I wanted to be very careful to press the glass and carbon into the corners and roll out any bubbles in the flats so that there are no voids, even though I'm planning to vacuum bag. Rolling out the laminate is just good lamination practice. Even if you can rely on a vacuum bag to take care of trapped air issues, it's best to avoid leaving those air bubbles in the first place. So I was just taking my time to do a good job, and finding that taking my time was taking a lot of time.
You mentioned in last week's video that you considered having aluminum radial drives custom made, but decided it would be cheaper and more fun, were your words, to make them yourself. So my question for you is, are you having fun? You've been working on these radial drives for 2 weeks now, nearly every day, many, many hours of lamination. Any regrets?
No, I don't have any regrets. I am having fun building them, and after the 6th day of building the clamps, it was definitely getting old. But no, I'm really enjoying them because it's a whole bunch of weird laminations and very tight tolerances, and they're turning out really good. If they were turning out not very good, then I would not be having fun. But I think that they're turning out really good, and so I'm excited to see them installed in the boat.
Yeah, you love your weird laminations, don't you?
I do.
Okay, here's what might be an ignorant question. Would it have been possible to 3D print these radial drives?
I honestly don't know enough about 3D printing, but I don't think so. 3D printing is all plastic, and I don't know if the plastic would be strong enough for this application. I think they'd have to be really beefy, even more beefy than the ones I'm building, but I really don't know enough about 3D printing to answer that.
Yeah, maybe someone in the comments knows.
Maybe, and I think we also don't have a 3D printer, even though Mike keeps telling me to get one. It's pretty warm here in Washington, and even though I'm using TotalBoat's high performance slow cure epoxy, when I layer it up this thick, the huge mass of epoxy starts to cure pretty quickly. I soon realized that after about half my layup was done, it was too warm to continue or even put the vacuum bag on. The thing was going to be hard by the time I got it under vacuum. So even though I didn't get a vacuum bag on it, I was happy with how it looked so far. I put some peel ply on it and called it good for the day. So now I'm committed to like 4 days of lamination per rudder, at least 3 days for the clamp and 1 for the saddle. This was going to take forever, and you can see that the part was starting to get really thick and unruly, but we kept at it and eventually the first saddle was done. After the clamp was built, I got to remove the caul plate and knock off the clamp to see if the whole thing worked. And it did. So the next step was to work on the saddle side of the clamp, which is laminated to the access slot that was cut out of the drive. First, I glued a G10 plate to one side of the slot and bolted an equal plate to the other side, which will keep this slot piece square inside the quadrant. I also filled the gap between the slot and the quadrant with epoxy so there's no sloppiness with the fit. Again, I'm using packing tape and wax to make sure that the glue doesn't stick to one side. Once those plates were installed, I could make the saddle. There are another 40 layers of glass and carbon that will make this saddle. This is a lot easier layup than the clamp, and I was able to get it done in just one session. The clamp side of the rudder and flange was covered with packing tape and greased up with wax so that the saddle wouldn't stick to the clamp. The next day, it was all set, so I got my chisel in between the saddle and the clamp and the two parts came apart. And the radial drive clamp is very tight to the rudder, but it also came off with some persuasion. Exactly enough.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Lastly, I decided that I want to do a better job connecting the two skins together around the perimeter of the radial drive and make the groove a bit smoother for the cable to pass through. So I'm adding a few layers of fiberglass tape to the perimeter of the drives. Alright, this is my second of 2 layers. Of 3 layers. Wait, what did you say?
How many layers?
I haven't decided yet.
I bet you do 3 layers.
We'll see how it turns out after this one's done. I don't want to fill up the gap too much, fill up the groove too much with too much material. She is impossible to please.
Happy, Inspector?
All right, these are pretty much done, and I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. As you can see, this clamp turned out super chunky. It is like 3/4 of an inch thick at the thinnest parts of it, and so it is going to be perfect for holding these radial drives onto the rudders. You can see that the bolts have been drilled out and a couple have been installed to attach the saddle to the clamp. One thing that needs to be done is attaching how I'm going to attach the ends of the cables back here to the radial drive. But next week, the plan is to get the rudders installed, get the radial drives installed, and build the cable system that will turn the rudders from the steering wheel to the radial drive. So that'll be really, really exciting to get that put together. So we'll see you next week. This is really silly.